Good Shabbos. Yesterday, the New South Wales lower house voted, unfortunately, to allow physician-assisted suicide. Fight isn't over. It still has to get through the upper house, and there will be amendments, and we'll have to come back to the lower house. So still a glimmer of hope. What is the Jewish position, and what's the reasoning behind it? Well, we know, obviously, the Jewish position is that not to terminate a life. Yes, there are certain leniencies about withholding extra medical procedures in regards to a terminal case. For example, you might not have to continue dialysis according to some opinions and so on. Never, however, withholding hydration and nutrition. But certainly terminating a life prematurely before the natural course of events takes place has no room in Judaism. So what is the reason behind it, and what is the essential distinction in the deeper perspective between the secular view and the Jewish view? So let me begin by first seeing this from perspective of Joseph. This week's Torah portion, we read about Joseph and the beginning of his travails in Egypt. How did Joseph, this young 17-year-old kid, how was he able to withstand the difficulties that came his way in his master's home and the prison and so on? How did he overcome it all? And the hint to that is later, when Joseph finally meets his brothers, and the brothers are embarrassed of him and concerned of how he will see them after they are the ones, of course, who sold him, Joseph said to them that, don't worry, you might have thought negatively, but Elokim chashava l'teva. Hashem had another plan. And in Hashem's perspective, it was all for the best. In other words, Joseph always saw himself, wherever he was, on a mission from God. Wherever Joseph was, whether it be in a prison, whether it be in his master's home, whether it be as viceroy, whether it be being taken captive from in the wagon with the Ishmaelites, he always saw himself as he is now being put here by Hashem. And this is really the distinction and the difference between the perspective, the secular perspective, and the Torah perspective. The secular perspective is, what can I get out of life? What does life have to offer me? And a person reaches a stage where they could say that I've gotten everything I wanted out of life. Life has nothing to offer me anymore. If anything, there's no value to me from life, and therefore I want to end it. That's the secular perspective. The Jewish perspective is very different. And to borrow a phrase, ask not what America could do for you, ask for what you could do for your country, from JFK. And it's similar to a story of the Alter Rebbe that I've shared numerous times, of a chassid who comes to the Alter Rebbe and says, Rebbe, he was a very wealthy man, and he was able to help a lot of people, and the wheel of fortune turned on him. He lost all his possessions, and he came to the Alter Rebbe and he complained, Rebbe, I don't have money myself. I can't even fulfill my commitments to orphans and widows that I gave. Please help me. And the Rebbe put his head down on his hands, and he turns to him and he says afterwards, all you're thinking about is what you need. You're not thinking about what you're needed for. From a Jewish perspective, we see ourselves in this world as on a mission from God, what we're needed for. And as such, when does that mission end? This mission doesn't end once we finish our primary work in this world. If we have a position, if we have a public service, if we're in public service, if we have a special position, if we're a doctor or help people in other ways, and then there comes a time that we can't do that anymore, possibly. Does our mission end? Heaven forbid. Our mission doesn't end. Our mission goes on and on until our final breath. Now, what could that mission be? Well, obviously, our mission could be doing mitzvahs. We could do mitzvahs almost all in all situations of our life. Even if physically we can't do a mitzvah, as long as our mind is working, we can have a thought of tshuva. And a thought of tshuva is very powerful. So we could be thinking about our connection to Hashem, and that could be our mission. Additionally, even when we can't do anything, our mission in life can very well be to see how others treat us and help us in our time of need. Our mission could be that our families treat us in the proper way in those very challenging times. And lastly, the very fact that a soul, a part of God, a divine soul, is in this world is extremely powerful. We say every morning in the first blessings of the morning, we say, the soul that you've given to me is pure and holy. It comes, you've created it, you formed it, you blew it into me, and you guard it within me. And this idea of you guarded within me is the concept that in order for a spiritual soul to be placed in a physical body, it needs to have a power that is greater than the two to put them together. And as long as one is breathing and existing in this world, that power, that divinity that is greater even than the power of the soul itself, has to be present. And so what you're doing is you have a world which has, so to speak, a low quotient of divinity. And in that world, you put a divine soul which has a much greater level of godliness than the physical world. And by it being placed in a body and being alive in a body, that in itself has the most powerful effect. The Baal Shem Tov actually would send people to places and say that even if they don't do a mitzvah there, the very fact that a soul in a body came to that particular place has the power to elevate and refine it. Remarkable. Now, they didn't even have to daven mincha or make a blessing or do a mitzvah. The very fact that the Jewish person was there made a difference to the place. And that's how we view it. We are here on a mission from God, each and every one of us. And that mission begins at birth and does not end until God takes back his deposit, takes back his soul. And we have no right to intervene on the candle of God, which is the soul of man, in that image of God that is each individual. We have no right to intervene and to cut off its source of life, because every moment again that we are here, we are fulfilling our mission. And if we view life, so the difference here is not a difference in how we view the end of life. It's a distinction in how we view life altogether. Is it what I can get out of life, or is it what I am needed for and what my mission is? Good Shabbos.